I think that we have our technology here worked out.
Yay.
And so what we're doing is broadcasting all these live wine education on all these channels. This is Maria from Dry Farm Wines. And Maria, do you want to first tell them about what we're going to drink? And then I'll tell them a little bit how I found you guys.
Yes, absolutely. So we are drinking this delicious sparkling wine. It's a Cremant d'Alsace. It's from France, and it is about 12.5% alcohol, which all of our wines are lab tested, so you'll know exactly how much alcohol is in every single bottle. So this one is a blend of Pinot Blanc, Pinot Noir, and Riesling. And it's really light and refreshing. It's really great for like a brunch or a midday, Sunday picnic, something like that. It's only 0.4 grams per liter, and it's absolutely delicious. I've got my glass poured right here.
I've got Mike. Should we do a cheers first
We
and have a
should.
before we move on?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if anybody has one with us, cheers along here.
Cheers, everyone.
Oh, wow.
So good, right?
That's awesome. So dry. And that is one of the things. So now it's a great segue into how I found you guys and how I started drinking Dry Farm wines because, as you know, most of you guys on this channel kind of follow along because I am keto and do fasting and all of this stuff. And so whenever I first started eating like this, I still loved wine, but I was aware that a lot of conventionally made wines had a lot more sugar in them that I wanted to be having when I was, practicing a keto diet. So I think I just Googled around, found Dry Farm Wines, read about them, read about their founder, Todd White, who actually, and listened to multiple interviews with him. He is a really good speaker. He actually talks about keto and fasting and all that stuff himself. He's an old school biohacker. So that kind of lit me up right away. And I was like, this is the perfect company for me. I've got to try this wine. And so I got it and I loved it so much. I think I had a couple of cases from you guys at some point and then realized that they, work with partners to kind of share the message about dry, sugar-free, all these wonderful things about wine. They get them mostly from Europe. I mean, there's just so many things about it that I loved. So I became one of their partners. And anyway, so that's how I got to know Maria. That's how I got to know Dry Farm Wines. And there's even a video on my YouTube channel. This has been up there for a long time. I would love to see how long now. But one time I took a hit for the team and I opened a bottle of Dry Farm Wines and I drank I think I drank 10 ounces within a half an hour because what I wanted to test was, can you drink it and stay in ketosis? And sure enough, not only did I stay in ketosis, but I actually, my numbers were a little higher, like after an hour. And that's a physiological process with alcohol that kind of works like that. But beside the point, it didn't have too much sugar, obviously. So
I love that. We have a lot of partners and members even who do track their blood glucose levels. And when we can have those like scientific results like that our partners share with us, it's so special to see.
Yeah. And it makes it easy to share because, a lot of people, I think whether we need to worry about getting kicked out of ketosis or not all the time is another discussion. Like it's not the end of the world. If you're waiting for the stopper, it's, you don't have to be in ketosis to lose weight. You don't have to be in ketosis 24 hours a day, but it is nice also just because also when you're enjoying alcohol, if you're, a lot of people come to keto for weight loss. And so one of the nice things with Dry Farm Wines is also without all the extra sugar, it's also, lower calories. So anyway,
totally. We're all about conscious consumption here. We're not like under the impression that alcohol is a superfood or generically healthy for you. But what we do know is that it enhances the human experience sometimes. And it's a lovely way to bring community together and open up and share. And so it's something that we like to do in a conscious way. And so that's why Todd created this company.
Yeah. And since you brought up the conscious consumption, I always love that discussion that he brings up. And, one part of that consciousness is that, can you go into the fact or into the reason why, number one, why you test your wine for alcohol, because, you know, as everybody knows, if you've ever seen a label on a bottle, you usually don't see the alcohol percentage, and there's no nutrition information. You don't know how many calories it has. You don't know what additives they've put in it. But because of your interest in conscious consumption, you guys have really kind of switched a lot of that around. So maybe it's a good time to talk about some of that. And I'll just have another sip of wine while you talk.
Yes, please do. I hope some of you at home have some wine as well that you're sipping on. So yeah, exactly like what you said. Often wine is really highly processed, just like our food is. And one of the tricky things about wine is that there aren't really any regulations about what's required to be on that label. So there isn't a lot of transparency when it comes to knowing what's in that bottle of wine and knowing what it is that you're putting into your body. So that's why Todd wanted to create this company. He was sort of not feeling great after drinking wine and trying to figure out what it was about the wine that wasn't making him feel great. And so, after lots and lots of research and touching base with amazing farmers all over the world, he found a couple of things that really dialed it in for him. And that one of them is dry farming, which dry farming is a really cool process where you essentially just don't irrigate the crops. So not only does it save a ton of water for the earth, but it's also a way to invest in these crops long term. That you create these crops that have to dig really deep down into the soil to find moisture, so they're stronger and they find more minerals deep down into the dirt. So he started working with these farmers that were really invested in this way of farming. And then not only did he find that they were healthier crops, but they were also lower in sugar and lower in alcohol. And so putting all of this together, he started to notice that that combination was really what made the big difference for him. So doing a little bit of research, and I'm sure on that podcast episode that he did with you, he goes really deep into this. So if you want to geek out even farther on all this stuff, listen to that episode because it is fantastic. But the food industry, I'm sorry, the wine industry is basically owned by three giant wine companies that own like 50% of US wine. And there are 76. Yeah, isn't that wild? Right. Basically the same as the food industry.
Right.
So there are 76 additives that are legally approved for use in winemaking, like dyes, thickeners, and even GMO yeast. And so the top 20 wines that are sold in the US contain higher levels of sugar and higher levels of alcohol. And they're not even really required to be super accurate when they say, like, oftentimes you'll see on the back of the bottle, oh, it says 14%. That's not even required to be super accurate. It just kind of has to be in the ballpark. So you could be having a 14.5% alcohol by volume bottle of wine and not even know it. And so oftentimes when you wake up the next day feeling terrible, that can often be one of the reasons why. So yeah, so once he discovered all of those sort of dirty secrets about the wine industry, he was like, all right, I got to figure this out. So he really wanted to go for organically and biodynamically grown grapes. That's one of our standards. Sugar-free, so statistically sugar-free, meaning less than 0.5 grams per liter. Low in alcohol, 12.5% or under. So it's going to be a lot lower than most conventional wines. And then they're all lab tested to ensure they meet all those standards. So with all of that in mind, it's really a completely different experience drinking the wines than you'll have like drinking the wines we used to drink in college.
Well, yeah, and like you said, I think it's an excellent point to realize that when we talk about this, I mean, obviously alcohol is a poison. And like you said, nobody's pretending that it's like a health food. And, you know,
Right.
people will say the resveratrol argument is bogus because the amount of resveratrol that you'd have to drink like 10 barrels of wine or something to get the amount of resveratrol. So it's kind of bogus. But I think the other part of that Todd always does a nice job of highlighting is, and when you're a mindful person, like there is this just nice little thing that happens with alcohol, that it just gives you a little bit more freedom to like connect and all of those things. And so when you're, and this is my favorite thing, like when I knew I was going to do a lower carb lifestyle, it's like I didn't want to give up that time around the table with family and friends where you're having a nice glass of wine. It goes so perfectly with the juicy red steak. And it's like you don't actually have to give that up, which is nice. So we do have one question, and I did want to just tell people like, hey, jump in with questions anytime, and I'll try not to miss them, but you can always contact me after if we do miss them. But the question was, do you ship to Canada?
Oh, we do not at this time. We are only shipping within the United States. And we even have a couple of states that have some strict regulations that we're not allowed to ship to. It's shipping alcohol is quite a challenge sometimes. And we are working on it. It's something that we continuously put on the table. But at this time, no, we are not able to ship to Canada. So sorry.
So 2 follow-ups on that. So the no ship states are Utah, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Michigan. So I'm sorry, I've actually had to buy, we live near Michigan, I'm in Ohio. And one of my friends, they had the wine at our house. She's like, she's like, went to order it. She's like, tell me all about it. I need to get it, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, they don't ship. So now every time we come up, I have to order an extra case and take it to Michigan.
That's so good.
Yeah, I know. I love it. But I was thinking, so since we kind of touched on that, because we have possibly listeners from around the world, I don't know, pop in the comments, you guys, like, where are you from? Tell us where you're from, what state, what country, all that good stuff. But so if people don't happen to be in the US, I happen to know this, I learned this from Todd. He said one of the best regions for getting really low sugar wine is the Loire region in France. Do you have any others that you can recommend or tips for people that might not be in the US and where they could find some better wines for them?
Yes, you are quite the expert. I love it. So the Loire Valley is a great place to start. Another thing that we tell people is just to ask for a detailed menu where you can see that it's from Europe. Europe is going to have a lot stricter standards than the US, especially like those, and even though we are in Napa, even those California oaky wines, those are always going to be super high alcohol. So you'll want to look for something in Europe, and then something with lower alcohol. So if they have a list that has that detailed like 12% alcohol, that's going to be the best, safest way to go. Something from Europe and something with that lower alcohol.
Oh, lots of people, somebody from Germany, somebody from Colorado. So I saw all these great countries, another flag that I didn't recognize what the flag was, but so there are definitely some people in other countries that want to learn more about natural wine. And I think that going back to what you said about finding the wines, if it does happen to say the alcohol or a detailed menu that has the alcohol, like you pointed out, there's probably a plus or minus 4 to 5 point difference. So if you find one that says 10, 11, 12, you can be guaranteed it's probably at least under 15. So it'll be a little better.
That's such a good rule of thumb. Totally agree.
Yeah. So anyway, let's see what else. I want to make sure we don't miss any of the wonderful topics that you had. So I think we're going to make the distinction, and this is a good one because I don't think I know the answer to this totally, is the difference between natural wine, organic, biodynamic, and conventional. Like what does each one of those entail?
Yes, such a good point. So natural wine is going to be everything that we sell. Organic and biodynamically grown wines are also the only things that we sell. So all of these things you're going to get if you get the Dry Farm Wines experience. Pesticide and herbicide free, which is one of the most important things that you'll get from those organic wines. Biodynamic is going to go a step further. It's a bit of a prescriptive way of farming that some of our farmers partake in, some of them don't. But really making sure that those pesticides and herbicides are completely out of the wines is hugely important for us. And they all go through that testing to ensure that they're also super low in sulfites, which is something that a lot of people have issues with. I'm sure you hear this a lot from some of your followers.
I just had a friend talking to me about it today because she's like, I want to join the thing. And she's also from Canada, unfortunately. And I said, I don't think that they ship to Canada. So I thought I knew the answer to that, but I wasn't positive. But I said I would make sure that I asked you about the sulfites and like if there's any other way to tell besides if they're tested.
There really isn't. And that's one of the biggest reasons that Todd started this company. It's transparency around alcohol content, sugar content, and sulfite content. That he really found that, I will say, there is a certain amount of sulfites needed just existing naturally in wine. In order for it to be wine, there has to be a little bit of sulfites, but there definitely doesn't need to be this massive amount that tends to be in conventional wines. So that sweet spot that we found is about 75 parts per million. So that is our cap on all of our wines, and the lab tests are posted for all of them. If you do have a subscription, or if you're thinking about getting a subscription, first of all, use Cheryl's link to sign up, so you get an extra bottle.
Oh yeah, definitely want that extra bottle. It's a penny when you get a subscription and you use the link. It's dryfarmwines.com/heal nourish grow. So it's pretty easy.
So yes, if you do end up getting a subscription, go ahead and download our app, just in the App Store, Dry Farm Wines. What you can do is you'll pull up the app and you can scan the label. And as soon as the label is scanned, it'll recognize which bottle it is from our inventory, and it'll pull up all the lab results. So you can see if you happen to be super, super sensitive to sulfites, you can see, oh, this one only has 22 parts per million. Amazing. And you can even favorite the ones that you love, and you can order more of them. It's a great app. Highly recommend.
I am so embarrassed because I did not know about the app.
Really? Oh my
No.
goodness.
And this is going to literally change my life because I'm not super sensitive to anything, but there are times where I'm like, oh, I should contact them about maybe getting more of this one or that one. And while I know they have an amazing concierge team because I've worked with them in the past, actually, I mean, this is how much we love them. My husband gives his clients Dry Farm Wines for Christmas. And we work with the concierge there. So if you ever like want more of a wine or had questions, whatever kind of questions, they're always happy to help. But this, oh my gosh, I didn't know about the app. I'm so embarrassed I didn't know that.
You gotta do it. It's so simple. You can keep track of all your favorites and pull it up later. So that's another thing that we should probably tell your audience too, is that if you haven't ever tried Dry Farm Wines before, it's not the kind of thing where if you fall in love with this bottle, you'll reorder it over and over and over and over again. We order small batches because we work with small family farmers who don't make hundreds of thousands of bottles. They make smaller batches, and that is what we purchase from them. And so we have new wines coming in every single week that we put in our boxes. So let's say you sign up for 6 red wines every other month. So this month in April, you might get a couple from France and one from Italy, one from South Africa. And then a couple months from now, we might have had some really great ones come in from Austria and Germany. And so you're going to get this taste through natural wine every single box, which is my favorite thing. But then like Cheryl does, you can go back and reorder if you absolutely love one. We have this custom concierge team who can pull those bottles off the shelf and save them for you.
Yeah. And that is one thing. So obviously a lot of people like to cellar their wines or save them. And obviously you can do that with these wines. They're all high quality European wines, but it's also nice. Like if you do happen to just one night randomly and you drink one that you really love, like hop on it, like contact them right away, get a case because you might not get more. And your point about another part I love about this is it is really kind of supporting a different part of the wine industry. So you talked about, like, for example, in the US, how we have these big 3 conglomerates that own all the wineries. Well, in Europe, I've been fortunate enough to go to Europe multiple times, always drink wine there, always love it there. I've been to some wineries there, and you go and it's like a family business that you're really supporting. So, and the beauty is a lot of these wines, if Todd were not bringing them into the US, we would not be able to get them because they're such small batches that you only get them if you're in Europe or if you're in Switzerland or you're in Austria. Austria, by the way, is an underrated wine region. You've got to try Austrian wines. Blaufränkisch. Every time I get a Blaufränkisch in your box, I'm just like, oh, thank God. I know. I love it. They
It's
are.
so true. We work with these small family farmers very closely. We have very close relationships with them. We visit their farms all the time. They've come to visit our Napa offices before, and it's like their family to us. And like you said, there's not a ton of there's not a big money in natural wine. And so Todd's goal was to kind of connect that, create consumer demand here by telling their stories to be
Mhm.
able to bring that business back to them. And so it's a really great way to give back to those family farmers.
Yeah, and by the way, if you do, I mean, I would seek it out if you ever happen to go to Europe. It's so fun to go to those small wineries and drive the back roads in Tuscany and do all that fun stuff. And I realize obviously not everybody can do that. And maybe this time in the world is not the best time to be doing that. But if you do ever get the opportunity, it's a really special thing. And I've always just really enjoyed it immensely.
Oh, yes, so true.
So let's make sure that we covered all of the. Oh, so this is a good one because I think this is a really unique feature of the company. And I'm going to preface this with saying that I don't know, I should go back and look how long it's been that I've been buying from you. How long has the company been around for start with
Should
that?
look. Yes,
Yeah.
2015 it began. So I can probably look up how
Yeah.
long you've been with us.
Pretty shortly after, I would say. I'm going to guess 3 to 4 years,
Yeah.
but it could be longer.
Mhm.
But in that amount of time, I've every wine that I've had from them. I'm not going to say that everyone blew my socks off or was my favorite ever because that would just be a lie. And because
Sure.
everybody's taste buds are different and you're going to
Right.
like different things. But I've never had a legitimately bad, undrinkable wine. Like it just doesn't happen. And I've had plenty of those when I've bought them from other places. So I think that's also a part of the point of this is that you guys highly curate your wines. Like you go to the winery, you taste the wines, you pick the certain ones because you like them and because they're good wines. But you do have this thing called the happiness promise. And I've never had to take advantage of it, but we should let people know what it is.
Yes. Oh, I'd love to hear that. So, yes, if you ever get a bottle in one of your boxes that you don't love, we will replace it for you or refund you, no questions asked. We want you to love every bottle that we send, and we know, like you just said, Cheryl, not everybody's going to love every bottle. And so we want you to love all of them. So we are really happy to replace any bottle that you don't love, send you a new one or refund you if that's what you prefer.
Yeah. So if you drink wine, I mean, it's like a no lose situation to at least
Totally.
try it and it's healthier for you. And I did want to follow up on one of your other points that you said.
Yeah.
So about feeling bad after drinking wine, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it is that people overindulged for sure. That is a
Mhm.
thing. But other times I think it is some of these chemicals and everything. And so when I particularly like, I've had friends say to me that have tried dry farms either at our house or they bought them for themselves after having it at our house. There's kind of two sides of it. One will be there's like, well, it's really hard to get buzzed on this wine. I'm like, well, if that's your objective, I don't know if that's like great, you know. But the second thing is that people say is they always say they feel so good the next day. Like they don't have any ill effects. They don't have a hangover. They don't have a headache. They just wake up and feel like they had a wonderful night with a delicious steak and some delicious red wine and enjoying time with their friends. And of course they giggled and had a great time. And I'm not saying like, you know, what's the point of you want to get a buzz or not, but that they always feel good the next day. And I think that is, for at least for me, that is very different. Like I said, I don't get real sensitive to stuff, but there are definitely some times, like red wine in particular, even if it's not an overindulgent situation, like I have had really bad headaches the next day. My husband is definitely super sensitive, I think, to
Mhm.
sulfites. And so one of the things we've observed about drinking dry farm wines is that we always feel amazing the next day. So it's a really particularly wonderful wine to have, like if you're just having a weeknight where you want to have one glass, but you have a meeting the next day, but you really want that steak with red wine taste pairing, you can have it. And I'm almost going to guarantee that you'll just feel amazing the next day. Like no problems.
Well, it
And
means
that's
a
not
lot.
part of their guarantee, but I will guarantee
Yes,
that.
let's be clear. But I will say we do have a ton of athletes and high performing individuals that tend to gear toward our wines for that reason, that they can still partake when here and there when they want and be able to still work out really hard the next day or perform really well. And so it's always really lovely to hear those stories because that's what I think it's all about. That's why Todd started this company, and to have all of these anecdotal stories of people going through that themselves is just, it means the world.
So, Maria, before we possibly end this festival and give people a chance to win 6 bottles of wine, which I'm so excited for you guys. You're going to love it so much. But before we do that, were there any final thoughts or things that you wanted to touch on that we didn't cover yet? And I just want to make sure that we didn't miss anything. If anybody has any more questions that we haven't covered or things that they want to ask about, I do see there is a little question waiting for me here on my phone.
Oh, yeah.
So we already asked about Canada. What? This is kind of a funny question. What about Dirty Village wine that's not filtered? I don't know. That's a good question. I'd say use that at your own risk would be my answer.
I don't think I can make any claims about that, but if you love it, go for it.
Yeah. I mean, unfiltered in general, it's, people like to talk about this with CBD, with all these other kinds of things. It's kind of, they call it like this entourage effect. And so if you're filtering out some of the naturally occurring things in any beverage, you might lose out on some of the benefit. So
Sure.
That's one thing I notice in natural wine. Like often I'll get a bottle and you get to the end of the bottle and there's some sediment, and that is totally normal and good.
Yes.
But you don't find that a lot in US wines because they make it for the consumer, and consumers get grossed out by that. But it's actually a kind of really good wine.
Totally. And it makes each bottle unique, which is one of the things I love about natural wines. And one of the things that actually makes a lot of sense for those big, huge companies that make mass amounts of this one bottle, because they want it to taste the same every single time. So they put in these additives that ensure that that happens. And from a marketing and a consumerism standpoint, you definitely understand why they would want to do that. But from our perspective of conscious consumption and enjoying every bottle individually as it was crafted by these farmers, I love that there's a little bit of sediment in one of the bottles. And some of the bottles you'll find, every once in a while, I'll get a bottle of red wine that has a little fizz to it, a little effervescence. And not everybody loves that in a red wine. And that's okay. It happens from time to time. So every bottle is super unique.
Yeah. And that's been my experience. I think I've probably had enough of them now that I can attest to that. You'll have to let me know. Like, I'll be interested to look when my first order was. But okay. So back to the thing. Was there anything else, Maria, before I let you enjoy the rest of your evening?
Yes, I think we covered it. I would just love to offer to anybody, if you have any questions, our amazing member experience team loves chatting about natural wine. We all love chatting about it. If you have any questions, you want to dive deeper into any of these topics, please reach out to us, service@dryfarmwines.com. We'll love to tell you about our subscription. It's super low stakes. Like we said, there's the happiness promise. You can always get a refund on anything that you didn't love. And you can also cancel your subscription at any time, move your order date if you're not going to be in town. So it's a really, really flexible way to have a subscription. It's not that kind of thing that you're like tied into something that you can't get out of. So just want to leave you with that.
To piggyback on that, I think you make it really easy because you can do all of that online. So when you have a subscription, you can actually log into your account, you can pause, you can cancel, you don't have to call an 800 number. They don't give you a hard time about anything. It's super easy. Like, you can just delay it for another 3 months. You can pause it, you can cancel it, all this stuff when you log into your account. So it makes it really easy. And we did have one other question pop up, but it might've been like right before we talked about the filtering, because they were asking, so are any of them filtered? And I think that the answer is no, because isn't that part of natural wine, or am I wrong about that?
No, you're right. It's very, very, very minimal filtering. So very, very minimal.
So that's it. So unless there's any other, jump right in there in the comment, like super quick, because we're about to wrap it up here. But like,
and you
Maria
can always
said,
send us a DM. You think of anything, send us a DM, send us an email.
Slide into the DMs, slide into my DMs, use the link to order it if you're going to go to the subscription, because like I said, I support this company 100%. That's the only kind of companies I work with, because I only do that if I love somebody. So I buy this with my own money and I love them. So
We're so grateful. And clearly you have an expert here in Cheryl as well. So if she doesn't have the answer, she can reach out to me too, and we'll find you some answers.
Yes. Between the two of us, we'll figure it out.
Yes, for sure.
So, well, Maria, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I hope that this was informative to people. I hope it helped explain why, like we said, even though drinking wine, it's like not a health beverage necessarily, but it is something that a lot of people enjoy. And so if you are going to enjoy it, you can at least have a better experience, have less sugar, feel better when you wake up the next day, and enjoy the wine and know that you're supporting a lot of farmers, small businesses that really are just perpetuating a really kind of an amazing tradition of doing wines in this way. I think one thing we forgot to say is they're not allowed to irrigate. That's why it's called dry farmed. And I think a lot of people don't know that. I don't think I ever knew about that before. It's like, actually, I don't know if it's technically against the law in Europe, but something like that. Like they're not allowed to irrigate their vines.
I think it's not against the law, but it's definitely against our standards. It's a lot more common over there because the crops are a lot older and they can handle it. It's something that's harder to start now here in the States. But yes, it's such a big difference, these dry farm crops, not only for the earth, but for the crop itself.
Okay. Well, Maria, thank you so much again. And everybody, I hope you enjoy the rest of your night. I know it's a Monday, but maybe enjoy a glass of wine if you'd like. If not, check out Dry Farm Wines when you have a chance. Cheers. Thanks again.
Cheers. Bye, everybody.
Bye.